What is it? How do we strengthen it? And why do we need it? You know, usually when we talk about core, people think about, you see these muscle guys or girls, shredded, big abs. But is that very functional? Then you have to ask yourself, why do you need a strong core? Well, for tennis, it's very obvious. Once you're trying to generate power from the ground up, through your upper body, it goes through the core. If you have a weak core, we're going to have energy links. So you're not going to be able to produce as much power as you want. Lastly, how do you train it? I'm glad you asked, and this is what we're going to do. With core, we're going to start with the progression. We're going to start with some of the most basic exercises that anyone can do, and we're even going to modify them for those people that can't do them. So we're going to start in a 4-point stance, and this is called the bird dog. Ideally with this, you want to see a nice flat back. If I had a pole running across my back, you can always use a dowel. There should be a point at the mid of my head, mid of my back, and my lower back. Ideally, an easy way to find how to have great position is you do the cat stretch. You push all the way up, come all the way down, push all the way up, come all the way down. What you want to do here is you want to find middle ground, and that's it. You want to make sure the hands are underneath the shoulder and the knees are underneath the hips. Ideally, when you do the bird dog, you want to come out left hand with right leg. I come out and I hold. When performing this motion, you don't want to see a big sag happening at the lower back. If that happens, what you want to do is you want to make sure you have good contraction of the abdominal wall. One thing that people do is that they actually hollow, which means you're pulling in your belly button. This actually has been proven to make you weaker. What you want to do is you want to brace your abdominal wall. One cue that you can use with your clients is that you want to stiffen as if I was going to hit you. Also, a cue is if I grab the abdominal wall and ask the person to push against me. If the person is having difficulty with this type of exercise, we can go to one arm, one leg at a time. The way to increase the intensity and the difficulty of this exercise is that I can come out into here and I can start holding for a certain amount of time. And we can hold that up to 10 seconds. One last thing that we can do to increase the difficulty again of this exercise is I can come out, hold, and create a square with my body while always doing a great brace and always maintaining a neutral spine. This would be our starting point. The next progression would be a plank. The plank is ideally set up with the elbows underneath the shoulders. My arms are out front, and I form a nice straight line. With some people, you'll have to start on your knees. A 10-second count, and then you can go back up, take a small break, and come back up. Ideally, once you're able to hold a plank anywhere from 1 to 2 minutes, I would move on. I would move on to something a little more difficult for the person. Ideally, because it does get to be a little boring staying in a plank for 2 minutes. So one of the ways we can make the plank a little more difficult, holding in a perfect position, pushing my body away, I can lift up a leg. And I can switch from side to side. Another way of doing it is that you can reach out in front and come back in. So that's our plank. From the plank, we can go into a side plank. Again, we'll start with progression. We're going to start with our knees, our feet, our knees stacked. Heels are in line with my tush. Elbow, very important on the side plank that it is directly underneath my shoulder. If you get it out too far, you're going to start putting too much pressure. From this position, you'll see a lot of people that come up. Ideally, when you do that coming up, what's happening to the spine, it's starting to bend a little too much. I want to take my hips and push them forward. And you would come back the same way. From this, we can go into what I would call a full plank. Get on the mat, I come up and I hold. The head, everything is kept in line. I should be a nice straight line. If I want to make this a little more difficult, I can lift my leg and I can do reps, or I can just hold. Taking the side plank and the plank together and molding them together is a great exercise for tennis players, teaching rotational ability. We do have to change the position of our feet, however. So as opposed to stacking them, the top leg will go in front and the bottom leg. We want a nice split. I'm going to start in this position, and I want everything to turn and come back out. What you will see with some people is they'll turn first with the upper body and then bring their hips, okay? Ideally, we want everything to turn together. The abdominal wall is made not for flexion, but it's made for anti-rotation. So even when you're hitting a shot, if I was to stand up and I'm hitting a shot, if though I do rotate, my belly button is always coming with me. It's not doing this and then that. So that's the reason when we do our side plank, we're going to go into this position. You'll notice my hips, straight line, everything comes in. We don't want that happening, and we don't want a sagging at the lower back. That can occur when you're doing the side plank to plank, and it can also occur when you're doing a regular plank. You'll see people, especially when they start getting tired, planking, the butt will either come up and come down. It's best to stop as soon as you start seeing the plank to falter. To train in a position that is not the correct position is just creating negative motor patterns, and we don't want that. The next exercise we're going to do is going to be a push-up position, hands underneath the shoulders, and I'm going to form a nice straight line. Okay? From here, all I want to do is just take my hand, touch the shoulder. When I'm doing this, the importance of this exercise is to keep that posture of the neutral spine. To do this type of exercise and go, or to let it sag, is not what we want. To make it a little easier, we put our hands closer together and our feet further apart. We brace prior to going. Not only is it a great exercise for your core, but it's also very good for your shoulder stability. So by doing this, you're getting a lot of bang for the buck. If we want to make this a little more dynamic, I can start on the side here, keeping this, and I can move across and come back. One of the things that you'll notice that people do incorrectly, especially when they start getting tired, in this position, is you'll see the shoulder blades popping out. This is something that we don't want occurring. One of the cues that you want to use for this is to push the ground away, and that creates a nice, strong core. The last exercise that I'm going to perform is called the dead bug. So I'm going to lie on my back, and I'm going to look like a dead bug. Now, for some people, just doing this and maintaining a good neutral spine, what often you will see what will be a definite hint of the exercise not being performed well is the rib cage coming up. So if I was to do this and my rib cage comes up and I start losing that distance, there's more distance between my lower back and the mat, I know I'm not doing it correctly. So ideally, the dead bug is done right leg and left hand. Performing these exercises will definitely get you a stronger core, will definitely help you with power production from the ground up, from your legs through your core, and give you a better swing, forehand, backhand, and serve.